Wall Street starts the week on a winning note. Key indices snap a three-day losing streak ahead of the all-important June inflation report due on Wednesday. Stocks in the Asia-Pacific trade higher, tracking a positive handover from Wall Street. The GIFT Nifty 2 indicates a positive start for the Indian market. And oil prices dip by about 1% as more hikes by the Fed look imminent. Brent slips below $78 a barrel overnight, but bears some losses in early Asian trade. Foxconn decides not to proceed with its $19 billion semiconductor partnership with Vedanta. The mining major says it is fully committed to chip manufacturing and has lined up other partners. The monsoon mayhem grips North India. At least 37 die as heavy rains lash more parts of Rajasthan and Uttar Pradesh besides Himachal Pradesh. Heavy rainfall alerts are issued for Bihar, Rajasthan and Uttar Pradesh, while the Yamuna has reached the danger mark as well in New Delhi. Prime Minister Modi too holds a meeting to take stock of the situation. Hi guys, good morning and welcome to Power Breakfast. I'm Pavitra Parekh. Those are the top headlines that we have for you this Tuesday morning. There's a lot to track as far as the global markets go, and the fact that we got a good handover from the US is definitely showing up in all of the Asian markets. So we're trading with good gains in early Asian trade. What's doing well? You have the Hang Seng market, which is up over 200 points right now. So around 0.7% right now. So that is the Hang Seng market. The Taiwanese index is seeing a gain of around 200 points. So looking very strong there. Actually, whichever Asian market you look at, it's doing quite well. The Korean market is 1.2% higher. You have the Nikkei trading with gains of 0.6%. So all in all, definitely quite a positive handover, from the US, and that is definitely showing up in all of the Asian markets. The GIFT Nifty will come up for you. It is currently around 30 points higher on the GIFT Nifty, and the implied open is around 62 points higher. So our markets could begin well in the green, but let's really see how things move from there. Yesterday, we got a close of just around 24 points higher. And today, it shows us that we could open around 60 points in the green as well. So that's what's happening across the Asian markets. But let's also talk about the US now. Wall Street ended Monday's trading session higher. So we actually snapped a three-day losing streak. The Dow actually saw the most positive news move coming through. It was up 200 points. The S&P 500 saw a move of around 10 points. And the Nasdaq Composite also closed in the green around 24 points higher. We have CNBC's Pippa Stevens, who's here to get us all of the wrap of the action that came through on Wall Street.
Markets ending higher as investors prepare for a slate of inflation data and the start of the second quarter earnings season. The Dow finished over 200 points higher, snapping a three-day losing streak. The S&P up 0.24% and the Nasdaq tacking on about 24 points. Facebook parent company Meta shares on the rise as Threads, the company's new Twitter rival, surpassed 100 million users. In a post today, Meta's CEO Mark Zuckerberg said those signups came mostly from organic demand. The platform being touted by Meta executives as a more positive public square for communities that never really embraced Twitter. And Novavax stock jumping after the biotech company said Canada will pay $350 million for forfeiting COVID vaccine doses that were previously scheduled for delivery. The announcement is a sign of hope for investors after the cash-strapped company raised doubts about its ability to stay in business earlier this year. According to an SEC filing, Canada's payment will be made in 2 equal installments in 2023. That's what's happening here in the U.S. Back to you in Mumbai.
All right, Pippa, thanks a lot for getting us all of that action from Wall Street. But let's also bring you some important opinion. This comes in from former Boston Fed President Eric Rosengren, as well as former Kansas City Fed President Esther George. Listening to what they had to say on the June jobs data, expectations from this week's CPI print, and of course, the Fed's next move.
The employment payroll has been increasing at a decreasing rate, and I expect that to continue. The labor market is still relatively tight, unemployment at 3.6%, but I do expect that there's going to be an easing as we get into the second half of the year. I'm not sure it's going to come down quite as quickly as the staff, but what I wouldn't do is anticipate necessarily a second increase, because I do think both the real GDP economic numbers are going to be weaker in the second half of the year. And I do think there's going to be a softening in the inflation indices as we get in the second half of the year, maybe not quite as dramatic as what the staff has in their forecast.
Inflation is really flexing its muscle and hanging in there. So I would not be surprised, as the FOMC indicated from their last meeting, that even though they did not raise rates in June, that they may be prepared to do so again, given that inflation. We'll see what the numbers look like this week. Well, I certainly expect that during the second half of this year, we are going to see some slowing, and I would expect that to feed through to inflation to some extent. But if you follow the projections that that committee has put together, to get to 3.2 by the end of the year would mean we'd need to see some pretty dramatic downshift in this week's report. But I think it's going to have to get closer to 3, certainly, than 4.5 for them to make adjustments in their rate stance.
All right, that is the word coming in. But let's also bring you some more important opinion. This comes in from Market Voices, Morgan Stanley Private Wealth Management's Catherine Simonetti. So listen into what she had to say.
You know, when we look at the data that is coming from last week, it has been pretty positive with consumer confidence and housing. And investors are finding it very difficult to figure out how to translate it into the context of their investment portfolios because they are afraid of this bull market that seems to be counterintuitive. At the same time, they're fearful of missing the recovery. And what we're telling them is that they need to stay disciplined, that they need to stay a little bit on the side of caution because the main risks that we've been talking about all throughout this whole year, the inflation that is coming down, but perhaps not quickly enough, higher interest rate environment that is here to stay, now this liquidity crunch that is going to be a pretty major issue for this market are all of the factors that are going to be affecting the market. And especially if we look at it from the short-term perspective.
With positioning having readjusted, the market, as you know, was significantly underweight tech, especially coming into this year. That's no longer the case. Now the focus is primarily on fundamentals. And we think that this earnings season is going to be important in trying to find out whether or not we're inching in the right direction. But in terms of catalysts, I think one of the problems we have is there is no meaningful catalyst right now, either to the upside or to the downside. And so that is what we think forces the market to be in a range-bound sort of environment with still an asymmetric risk to the downside because big picture, the macroeconomic condition still is sort of murky. And earnings, if you look at outside of tech, especially S&P X tech, there the trend is still negative. In fact, the revisions have been negative to the extent of around 7%, while more AI-exposed names have seen revisions up almost 7%. So I think it is a tale of two cities in terms of how to view this market.
All right, that is a whole host of important opinion that we are getting from the global markets. But now that we've gone through all of the global market action, let's talk about how all of these overnight cues really impact us. We have our research team here with the trade setup. Nigel, Vivek and Surbhi are all in to fill us in and take us through the trade setup this morning. Guys, a very good morning to all of you. Vivek, let me come to you first. We were going through the global setup right now, and that at least looks quite positive.
Well, absolutely right. Good morning. Like you mentioned, the global handover has been quite positive, not very strong in terms of the price action, but despite that, it's a green screen across both Europe, US, as well as Asian markets today morning. US indices managed to end a 3-day losing streak, and when you're talking about European markets, they too managed to end with marginal gains, given the fact that the week prior was one where there was a lot of choppiness. Brent futures actually yesterday slipped almost 1% lower to almost $77.69 a barrel, and this is something that Indian markets will take some positive cues from. Now, coming to Indian markets yesterday opened high. The initial up move was quite strong, but what actually happened was that there was significant selling pressure from the top, and at the end of the trading session, Indian markets actually ended almost flat or close to the the flatline index itself. Now, broader markets yesterday were one that underperformed after quite a few trading sessions, and the advanced decline ratio was something that was skewed to the downside. Now, Reliance was the one that actually aided the Nifty up move, and it was a sole outperformer in terms of the other sectors that were significant laggards. Now, some important cues to keep an eye out for. Remember, the impending HDFC Bank merger is something that will have a significant impact on all of the indices. There will be changes that will be happening in tomorrow's trading session, but today you could expect some pre-positioning. So watch out for both of those names, and also watch out for the for the names that will actually be replacing them in the various indices. So LTI Mindtree that will come into the Nifty, as well as JSW Steel that will come into the sensex.
All right, Vivek, thanks a lot for taking us through all of those cues that we should track. Let's also bring Surbhi in She's looking at all of the individual stocks that we should have on our radar today. So it'll be the big news, of course, on the Foxconn Vedanta partnership.
That's correct. So Vedanta says they're fully committed to its semiconductor project and they've lined up other partners to set up India's first foundry. Next on my radar is Cartrade. Now the company is going to acquire 100% stake of Sobek from OLX for 530 odd crores. McLeod Russell, the board has approved an agreement with Carbon Resources to monetize company's assets. Now, this proposed asset sale is a one-time settlement towards company's debt. Nazara Tech, the board has approved a fundraise of 750 crores. Tata Communication, the company has acquired remaining equity ownership of OSA Smart Sim Europe. And lastly, Sangvi Motors is also on my radar. The company gets work orders worth 150 crores from Independent Power Products.
Okay, Surbhi, thanks a lot for taking us through that entire list of stocks. We are going to watch for these in today's trading session. Finally, let me hand it over to Nigel, who's looking at all of the cues from the futures and options space. Hi, Nigel.
Well, morning. The premium on the Nifty that started close at around 100 points, that's down to around 50 points. So one was wondering whether or not there was some shorting on the index. But it appeared there was more amount of unwinding because both on the Nifty futures as well as on the Nifty bank futures, the open interest was low by around 2 to around 3%, odd indicating there was more unwinding or lightening of positions getting into the earnings season. That's precisely what the FIs did as well. They unwound close to around 2,000 long contracts and they unwound close to around 5,000, they covered close to around 5,000 short contracts. On the index option side, well, what stood out was they had bought some calls earlier, well, they unwound that. But now, in fact, they bought some puts close to around 12,000 put contracts. On the writing side, they continue to write more calls than puts, indicating that in the near term, at least the upside appears capped. Today, though, the big trigger will be the Nifty Financial Services Index because that plays out expiry today. It's the Tuesday, so that's why that will be in focus. And also keep an eye on HDFC Limited. It's the final time that HDFC Limited will be part of the Nifty Financial Services Index in the current form. In future, well, it will be participating by HDFC Bank because both of them will come together. Two strikes that stood out there. The 20,000 call, well, that added close to around 30 lakh shares. The premium out there was close to around 43 rupees approximately. And on the downside, you had the 20,000 put that was fairly active as well, which brings us to the range. Well, you're just going by the premium out there, it'll be around 19,970 to around 20,150. That's a broad range on the Nifty Financial Services Index. And I've looked at the options data and plugging those numbers in. Well, since there was some writing at around the 19,300, 19,350 put on the Nifty, we're looking at a support of around 19,275. While on the upside, we did a U-turn yesterday from around 19,435. We need to break that mark for a fresh breakout. But given that the GIFT Nifty is suggesting a green start, I don't think you chase the opening. If you want to get in, you look at buying on a dip. Otherwise, in fact, you could get trapped on the upside. But stop loss in place at around that 19,275. That's going to be important. Back to you.
All right, Nigel, thanks a lot for getting us all of those cues. With that, we do need to get into a short break on the show. But up next, like we told you, Foxconn has decided not to proceed with the semiconductor partnership with Vedanta. So we're going to bring you all of the details on this story after this break. Welcome back. You're still tuned into Power Breakfast. Now, the big story that came through yesterday is that mining major Vedanta and iPhone maker Foxconn have called off their $19 billion joint venture for semiconductor manufacturing. Nigel is back with us to tell us more about this. Nigel, take us through the details and what does Vedanta have to say now?
Well, Foxconn has said that they'll not be moving ahead with this joint venture with Vedanta. They also said that they are working to remove the Foxconn name from what will now be an entity that will only be part of Vedanta's scheme of things, and Foxconn has no role to play in it. Well, Vedanta, I wrote to them, and in fact, they have replied to me. They say that they reiterated that they're fully committed to set up the semiconductor fab project. They also go on to state that they have lined up other partners to set up this particular India's first foundry here in India. So they're committed to the project is what they say. What you need to track from here on is what is the total capex that they're looking at from here on? That's going to be very, very important. Remember, initial estimates were 19 to around 20 billion. So how do they fund that is going to be important. We watch out. Is there a new partner coming in there? Because they'll require some kind of funding help. It's a big, big project. So we'll have to wait by for that. And will it increase the leverage on the books? That's going to be an important point as well. So we'll track this story. But for the time being, it's a bit of a blow to Vedanta Limited, the shareholders. Let's see how this goes.
All right, Nigel, thanks a lot for filling us in with all of the news. In fact, staying with the Vedanta story, in an exclusive conversation with CNBC TV 18, the Union Minister for Electronics and IT, Ashwini Vaishnav, had said that both Foxconn as well as Vedanta were fully committed to India's semiconductor ambitions. Meanwhile, the Minister of State for Electronics and IT, Rajiv Chandrasekhar, also said that Foxconn's decision to really withdraw from the partnership with Vedanta would have no impact on India's semiconductor fabrication goals. So those are some important calls coming in from the ministers. But with that, we do need to get into a break. When we come back, we will bring you the latest on the weather situation as torrential rains continue to affect several parts of North India. Stay tuned for all of the details. Welcome back. Another important story that we are looking at this morning. A number of strategic deals are likely to be announced during Prime Minister Narendra Modi's France 3-day visit, which begins on the 14th of July. So Parikshit is joining us on the phone line now to tell us more about this. Hi, Parikshit. Good morning.
Well, yes, these are very important deals for the Indian defense forces. And just like the U.S. visit, the defense component will be very high during the Prime Minister's visit to France. So France has been pitching for the sale of Rafale aircraft to the Indian Navy for the Indian fighter carriers. So we are hearing now that the Defense Procurement Board has approved the proposal to buy 26 Rafale fighters, Rafale Marine fighters from Dassault Aviation. And these will be 22 fighter aircraft and 4 trainer aircraft. The terms of the deal the payment mechanism, all of that is still being negotiated right now, is what we're told. A final meeting regarding this is going to take place on the 13th of July, and post which we believe that the deal could be signed during the Prime Minister's visit and meeting with President Macron in France. Second is a submarine deal. 3 additional Scorpion submarines could be acquired by India. That proposal has also received initial approval, and these, if approved, would be built at Musgrave Dock Limited. There are also deals which France is offering in terms of technology transfer and joint development of jet engines, which could help India's fighter jet program. So let's see what happens. But of course, there will be 3 to 4 big defense deals on the cards when Prime Minister meets President Macron.
All right, 3 to 4 big defense deals could be likely in the next few days. Pariksha, thanks a lot for bringing us all of the details. But with that, let's also move on and bring you the latest on the weather situation in North India. Torrential rainfalls continues to wreak havoc in the northern parts of India. The heavy downpour has claimed at least 37 lives in the region. And the IMD has currently predicted heavy rainfall in Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, as well as several northeastern states. This is for the next 72 hours. In Delhi, schools and corporate houses have been shut as the IMD has issued a flash flood alert in the region as well. Meanwhile, if you look at the Himachal Pradesh region, the situation continues to be grave. We have several houses, shops which have been washed away in the floods. We've all been getting visuals of that. And several areas in the state have also been issued with a red alert as the rain is likely to continue for at least the next 24 hours. This is according to the latest IMD reports. They're also saying that the rain is likely to subside by today, but we could see at least 24 hours more of heavy downpour. However, the heavy rain really continues to take a toll on the lives of people. Prime Minister Narendra Modi also met with the chief ministers of Himachal Pradesh as well as Uttarakhand and has assured them of complete support from the central government. So the situation really continues to be quite grave in several parts of North India, and we do hope that everyone can be brought to safety at the earliest. That's everything that we're tracking on Power Breakfast this morning. But before we wind down, we'll just take a quick look at the Asian markets, which are all up and about in trade after that positive handover that we did get from Wall Street. So you have the Hong Kong market, which is trading over 100 points in the green, 120 points higher. The Taiwanese index is doing very well right now, almost 200 points higher there, 170 points higher on the Taiwanese index. The Kospi is up over 1% as well. Nikkei doing well. So there's all in all a very positive screen across the Asian markets. The GIFT Nifty also indicates a positive open for our own markets. Around 65 points higher is where we're at on the GIFT Nifty. That's all that we have time for on Power Breakfast today. Thank you very much for tuning in. We have Bazaar Morning Call up in.